Hello and welcome to another episode of Fixing Your Club. This time we're going to be focusing on Sale Sharks. Sale have had a tough season despite the hot start that they got off to in 2023. Sanderson's men look to have been in real title contention after the first 6 rounds of the competition, but a massive injury crisis and inability to play his first 15 have led to just 2 wins in their last 10 games in all competitions, form that would see them second from bottom in the Premiership table. Naturally, a side reliant on a very physical and collision-heavy game plan was always going to struggle when their weight and ballast ends up on the injury table. But despite this being an indelibly dark run of games for Sale, it might just prove vital in understanding their shortcomings and lack of versatility. Sale have really struggled to get over the whitewash the second half of this season, with just 39 tries scored so far, which is joint second worst with Gloucester. They've also only converted 10 penalties so far this season, which is unbelievably low when you put it like that, proving that the opposition are finding it very easy to cope with their pressure and aren't being forced in making mistakes in their own half to get away with scores. Also, there is an elephant in the room regarding Ford's kicking so far this year. Although last year he brought an added match intelligence, vitality and consistency to this Sale side, this year his kicking success is just 64%, which, again, unbelievably, is one of the worst in Europe. That's really painful for a side that have made over 5,000 metres in the carry so far this year, only to convert 287 points, which is also one of the lowest in the league. Curiously, the defensive stats aren't actually that bad, despite the rapidly declining results most recently. They are running at an 86% tackle success rate, which is a type of percentile that you would see from a top 4 side. They've also won 87 turnovers, which is largely down to Ben Curry's excellent form this season. But it's not all rainbows at the breakdown either, as for every turnover they are winning, they're conceding 2, having conceded 164 turnovers in attack so far this season, which seems very out of character for a side with so many savvy operators. Their set piece is stable, but has taken a massive drop since last season, falling by 5% in line-out success so far this season and over 7% in scrum success. Whereas it was an absolute weapon at the start of Sanderson's reign, it has now become a functionality, with scrum time in particular being a real worry as they now lose 1 in 5 scrums. Discipline-wise, they are actually much better than their form suggests, as they've only received 8 yellow cards this season and 0 red cards, which is towards the top end of that table. And they've conceded 150 penalties, which again is much lower than some of the Premiership's worst defenders. So should Sale fans and Sanderson be worried? Well, maybe. The underlying stats there aren't great, and there isn't a single meaningful statistic which has improved since last season, and there have also been some of the largest declines in significant areas that we've seen from any club so far this campaign. But the data sample is tainted, as Sale have had double figures in the injury column since November, including big first-team talent like Tom Curry, Ben Curry, Rafi Quirk and Bevan Rodd. In short, it's horrible reading, but it's made all the more unfortunate due to how competitive and balanced the league has been so far this season. So what has Sanderson got in the locker to change fates for next year? Recent announcements of significant departures in Visa and Tuolangi were not necessarily unexpected, but the instantaneous leaving of Joe Jones and subsequent replacement in Will Griff-John in the short term does seem like slightly muddled thinking to me. LaRue Rotes and Wasaya Naisalevio are the only signings thus far that have been confirmed for the new season, which points to a clear intention that they do want to win trophies right now with this squad. However, I think there are huge risks attached, in particular that Naisalevio signing, who at 34 years old, and I can't imagine for a price/sale, is very immediate thinking. Now don't get me wrong, Naisalevio is an absolute Rolls Royce of a player, and one of Fiji's all-time greats, and still absolutely capable of contributing at the top level. But one injury may permanently halt his time at Sale before he's made an impact, which is the last thing a massively injury-hit squad needs. Rotes is much more my flavour. A 6'7" lock weighing a colossal 138 kilos at his physical peak is a wicked signing for a side looking to commit to a very physical game plan and to continue carving out this nasty identity. Thankfully, so far, Sale have the least amount of turnover in their squad moving into 24-25, which can only be a good thing for chemistry and gelling. This season is going to have the largest turnover of talent we've potentially ever seen in the Premiership, with every club but Sale having 10 or more impending and pending out signings. Some sides have upwards of 20. That's really important as it changes the expectations of each club involved. So how would I fix this side? Well, the squad is absolutely stocked, and I go so far as to say maybe bloated, which is nuts to say considering all of the aforementioned injury crisis talk. Backups and players coming into support have simply not been good enough, or able to carry through Sanderson's game plan effectively enough. Sale also have a reputation of holding on to talent for slightly too long after their dip, and although that loyalty is absolutely admirable, the Premiership has become a highly rewarding place for those who are happy to cut and run. When I look around this squad, there are plenty of people I'd look to move on, regardless of how necessary they become this season. The perpetually injured, although highly talented Tommy Taylor has spent the majority of his Sales and Wasp career on the doctor's table. I'd look to move him on. When you cut Josh Beaumont, he bleeds Sale Sharks. But at 32, with his own injury worries, I'm afraid I'd also look to move on. Simon McIntyre is a Premiership veteran and has played admirably since returning back to Manchester, but he too I would look to move. Veanu has also been pretty poor since joining Sale, and his signing looks even worse in the short term, and it hasn't worked out well for either party. At 33 years old, I'd also not be looking to renew. Even players like Hiron Andrews, who are 28 going on 29 and have only made one start this season, I feel you'd have to part company with, as they just aren't Premiership quality at this time. Now, all of this seems very harsh, but you've immediately created a bit of budget there using players that wouldn't start in a title challenging squad, which is what Sale are making these signings for. Also, you start to deplete that pool of injury prone players that can make next season far more predictable. Once that's been sorted, it would also be much clearer as to where we're really at. I also think it's important to reiterate the problem with Sale is not their starting 15. Their problem is the quality coming off the bench to close out these games or contribute during difficult parts of the season. So with that in mind, let's focus on the pack. The starting front row, second row pairing, especially with Rotes coming in, and back row is absolutely fine, and one of the Premiership's strongest outfits. So I'm quite keen on bringing in a relatively young backup option to cover lock and six, as the hybrid blindside lock has become heavily in fashion in the last few seasons. Think of players like Cunningham South, Courtney Laws, Rusi Toima, and so on, who you can base an entirely attritional game plan around, and who can also deputise when there are injuries to the likes of Curry and Dupria. Now, there are a couple of names that I looked into potentially bringing in. There was the highly rated Yosefa Tamani from Colomiers, who made the move 2 seasons ago from the Fijian Drua to start a new life in the French second division. There was also Nafi Ma'afu, a player with bags of potential, putting in some solid performances at a stagnant Biarritz side. He's somebody that I've already linked to a bunch of clubs wanting to add some 6'7" American horsepower. However, the player I've settled on is Mozaati Moala, a young 22-year-old hybrid lock coming out of Aurillac in the Pro D2. Aurillac are massively overperforming minnows, sat in 11th in the league from 16th, despite having a whopping minus 124 points difference. Mozaati has appeared in 7 games so far this season, picking up wins against Agen and Mont-de-Marsan along the way. In those matches, he's played 80% of the time at lock and 20% of the time at number 8. But when I look at his raw physical attributes, he looks perfect for that hybrid 6 role. He's 6'5", so he's right on the line of being tall enough to contend at the line out, but he's also 20 stone 6 pounds, so he's an absolute tank of a player. His post-contact meters made is one of the highest of any under-23 player in that league, and he's a really intimidating presence whenever a carry is needed. He originally came through the systems at Biarritz and Agen before bouncing around academies with Toulay and Brive. As far as I know, his contract will be in the renewal stages shortly before the end of the season, so if you want to strike effectively, now might be the time to bring the hammer down. Sale clearly need more creativity too, as they have a really strong back three in Aaron Reed, Roebuck and Carpenter, but it's just not converting into tries. Although I like Sam James a lot and I like the younger Bedlow brother coming through at Nottingham, I think Sale are lacking that Ollie Lawrence, Will Joseph or Luke Northmore type presence. Billy Wara is a 26-year-old, 6'3", 105 kg Fijian and English qualified rugby player who joined London Scottish midway through the 2022-2023 season, having impressed in the Scottish Super 6 series. Billy had also spent time at National One side Sale FC before joining the Exiles, which isn't just a coincidental link here. In his first 6 months at the club, Billy was an integral part of the club's survival. His ability to run hard at the line and punch holes in any defence proved crucial in the side getting on the front foot. But don't let that fool you. His creative numbers are also right up there as shown in the Premiership Rugby Cup. Since then, Billy has impressed season upon season and has actually turned into a highly versatile player who can play inside and outside centre. He would be a really useful bench option for this side as someone who could improve massively under Nisa Levu's tutorage and apply his power into this highly abrasive side. Controversially, I'd also look at getting another winger in, as with international call-ups there now becomes a magnifying glass on the likes of Roebuck and Reed, In particular, I worry for Reid, as his Scottish eligibility might eventually see him move further north into one of the Scottish URC sides. A backup winger with massive finishing numbers might be a great alternative for this side in case they suddenly need to start creating. Rafael Costa Storti is a 23-year-old Portuguese international currently playing for Béziers in the Pro D2. He already has 24 caps for Portugal so far in his career and a further 11 caps for the Sevens side. He is a try-scoring menace with some of the best finishing numbers in Europe. 16 tries in 24 matches for Portugal, an unbelievable 21 try tally in 22 starts for Béziers this season, and 13 tries in 15 starts for Béziers last season. He's hardly diminutive, standing at 6 foot and 90 kilos, but since going through that Stade Francais Academy in the under-23 league, he's become one of the continent's brightest talents. He's played 73% of his career on the right wing, 27% on the left wing, a very dexterous player in which you could play him in pretty much any position you'd like him to, and he's absolutely rapid. He could be your very cheap alternative to a Damien Penaud. Sale also have history of turning players from Southern Europe into Premiership stars. If you cast your mind back to the days of Spanish winger Oriol Ripoll, who was a mainstay in their Premiership title win 2 decades ago, Costa Storti isn't being talked about nearly enough by teams needing an effective winger to score some points. And then, in honesty, the only other way that we can improve upon the execution numbers of this side is to take a look at the coaches. Sale, even under the best of times with Sanderson, have never been a free scoring side. And that's totally fine, as their other attributes have always been so strong. But I do feel like this stagnant attack needs some new blood. So maybe I'd start to look at options there. Brad Davis will be a familiar name for those who used to follow the Super League, and an even more familiar name to those within the English Premiership. He's one of the high-profile coaches to leave Eddie Jones's coaching staff ahead of the turbulent Australian World Cup campaign, which, in hindsight, has to be one of the all-time best rugby decisions. He started his career as defence coach of Bath, and during 7 seasons at the Rec, Davis also spent time as specialist skills coach, an assistant coach, and then as head of kicking strategy and attack. He then moved to be a defence coach at Wasps for 3 seasons before a similar stint at Ospreys in the Guinness Pro 14. Davis then joined London Irish in 2019 as assistant coach alongside ex-Ireland boss Declan Kidney and former Kangaroo Les Kiss. He was instrumental in engineering one of the best attacking sides in recent memory there, and when he joined the Wallabies, that identity really continued. We can say a lot about how poor the Wallabies have been over the last 5 years, and it's really difficult to discount the fact that they've still been able to score tries and create opportunities, which is largely down to coaches such as Davis and their impetus to create such well-drilled attacks. So there you have it. There's my fixing your club on Sale Sharks. If you have any suggestions on how you would fix this side, make sure that you put it in the comment section down below. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure that you subscribe for more. If you're watching this on TikTok, follow me for more content.